and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details.
Hi, Rach. How are you?
I'm good. There's lots happening at the moment, as you know, but it's all very interesting and exciting. All I can say is watch this space.
Yeah.
And I have to tell Lynne to say that too, because she would race in and tell everybody everything if we didn't.
Oh, totally. I can't help it.
But we do have news coming up, don't we?
We do.
Yeah.
And we've had such great guests on the pod lately, and today's another good one.
Yes, it's Vivienne Pearson, who I know really well because she's an active member of the Rachel's List Gold group. And she's also written for Rachel's List, and she has a very interesting niche. So I'm just going to read a quick bio for Vivienne, and then we'll get her into the hot seat.
Okay.
Vivienne Pearson is a Byron Bay-based freelance writer of opinion, features, and creative content. Her words have been published in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, Guardian Australia, The Saturday Paper, The Big Smoke, ABC and SBS News Online, Mindfood, Delicious, Domain, and more. She also creates content for business and organisations that's informative, inspirational, and above all else, readable. She learned so much by having opinion pieces published that she decided to create a course to help others get their opinion writing voices heard. And it's offered as an online course with weekly feedback via the Australian Writers Centre. Oh my God, Vivienne, you're a powerhouse woman.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. And it sounds so much better when it's read out like that than on a day-to-day basis.
Look, bios, they can be quite overwhelming to have read, and you just sit there and go, wow, I really did all that. Amazing. But you are amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Vivienne. How long have you been freelancing?
Yeah, so my words were first published and importantly paid for back around 2009, 2010, but that was on quite an occasional basis, and I was working in other jobs, other careers. Then I made a simultaneous sea change and career change. So I moved from Melbourne to the Byron Shire. I was very fortunate to have a period of long service leave, which is just gold for being able to explore some other parts of life. So during that time, I did the freelance writing course with the Australian Writers Centre, and it basically went from there. And writing has been my main income ever since. So last 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, amazing. And so you have started recently, or maybe not so recently, specialising in opinion writing. Tell us about how that works and how you got into it.
Yeah, I mean, look, opinion writing is really just one of my areas of writing. It's also, worth being honest about. It's a small part of my income. It would be pretty much impossible to rely on opinion writing for income unless you were fortunate enough to have a regular column. It was one of my, I'd have to count back, but maybe one of the first 10 or so pieces I had published was an opinion piece. And it was for The Age, which was a newspaper I'd been reading since I was a teenager. And I had an idea and I realised it might fit, and I sent it off. And it was published. So that was, it was actually quite early on in my writing career that I first started writing opinion. It's the type of writing I love the most. So I don't force ideas, but when I have ideas or inspiration, I'll put everything aside as much as I can to give that top priority.
Amazing.
All right. So, because I was trained like a million years ago as a journalist and from way back, and I find opinion writing really hard. I think I was always taught by all these crusty old subs and everything back in the day to keep my opinions out of my work. And I think I'd find it difficult to make that transition. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I really understand that this is an issue for many writers like you, Lynne, who have that more formal journalism background, but I don't have that. I've never written in any way other than freelancing, and I don't have a journalism background. And I actually started my first writing, well as those early opinion pieces, were first person pieces, or some people call them personal essays, or travel pieces where I was part of the story. So actually, from the outset, I was very used to having my experiences, my viewpoints, and my opinion as either part of or actually the main focus of my writing.
So what do you think makes an opinion piece successful? I mean, do you write it first, or do you pitch the idea? We're taught really to pitch the idea so you don't waste time in case it doesn't get picked up. But do you find some things are an easy sell, or you're surprised at what gets picked up?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. It's kind of the big questions, isn't it? But I'll start with the practicalities. Sometimes I pitch an opinion piece, but that's really only if the editor already knows my writing, or if an editor does a call out, say, I'm looking for opinion pitches, I will pitch. But generally, I recommend writing opinion pieces on spec, so submitting them fully written. And that's what I still do most of the time.
Wow.
That's partly, from my point of view, to make sure that a piece is going to work. It's one thing to have, I've got an idea, I've got an opinion, but is it actually enough to sustain 800 or 1,000 words?
Yeah.
Or, are you actually going to start questioning your own opinion by the end of that? So you really need to know it's going to work. I also think about it from the editor's point of view. And the truth is, opinion pieces are not an easy sell. Most sections have far more pieces to choose from than they have capacity for. So you put yourselves in the editor's shoes. They've got two things in front of them. One is a pitch from a writer, and assuming that they don't really know either of these writers. And then they've got a fully written piece. Are they going to take the chance that that first writer will be able to realise their vision and manage to write it successfully and submit it while the issue is still timely? Or are they going to take the fully written one? Even if you're a brand new writer, if in front of the editor is a compelling, beautifully written opinion piece, they don't care that you've never written before. They'll never even look at your website or anything else. You don't even have to have a website. If that piece is in front of them, accepting it's a bit of a no-brainer for them.
Yeah.
It does mean you're taking the risk and spend time on a piece, but usually for opinion pieces, you're not interviewing anyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do research, but sometimes you're not even doing any research. So it's more you taking the risk rather than, what can be involved in other sorts of features.
That's really true that you say that. And I am very much of the don't write on spec, send the idea. But it is different. I noticed you mentioned travel. It is different in certain niches, because I remember when I was starting doing a lot of travel writing, I would write the piece while I was away and it was all fresh and everything. And then I would just send it to Escape or whoever with the best images that I had. And more often than not, it did get picked up that way.
Yeah.
So it works for travel, even though, again, I wouldn't advise it now or for senior journos. I would always say sell the idea first. And often you have to do that with travel because you're trying to get on a famille and get the commission before you get the famille.
Yeah, I mean, I think for opinion pieces and I think for first person pieces, because there's a big gap between the idea, which can be summed up in a pitch, and then the fully written piece.
Yeah. Interesting.
You talked a bit about timeliness too. That was interesting, because that would be key, wouldn't it?
Yeah, timeliness is everything with opinion writing. I generally these days don't work evenings or weekends, but let me tell you, if I've got an opinion piece in mind, I will ditch my personal rule in order to get it done. Partly because I'm just obsessed with it until I can get it onto paper, but also because I know full well that, you need to get it in front of an editor really quickly if that topics in the news.
Yeah.
Now, there was another half of your question, Rachel, which is what makes a good opinion piece.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yes.
No, that's all right.
There were 5 questions in one question. I really need to get better at that.
Oh, that was me.
It was Lynne's script. It's not my fault.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot in that, but basically I think, there's a bit of a secret sauce, which is flavored by having a really unique view on a topic that's in the news, but also being really genuine about who you are in relation to that topic. That you don't pretend to be an expert. If you're writing this piece as a parent or as a resident of this region or as a person with grey hair or whatever it is, you're writing from who you are and not pretending.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's, the good writing, a strong hook, having a really clear opinion and a really engaging way of communicating all of that. And of course, if you're keen to explore that more, you can check out my course.
Amazing. We will definitely talk about your course, but I think Lynne wanted to talk to you about the masthead that you write for.
Tell me, is it tricky to write for different mastheads? Because in your bio, you said you write for the Herald and the Age and the Guardian and a few others. Do you send it out to different, like a lot of them at once, or do you sort of target them to particular mastheads? You might think, oh, this is a Herald story or this is a Guardian story or whatever.
I do tend to have one in mind. I get quite scared of simultaneous submissions because, I know that the potential downside is that you're going to annoy a whole lot of people. Opinion writing, again, I think because of the timeliness, sometimes you do need to do that. And the truth is there are only so many publications in Australia that have opinion sections open to freelance writers. It's not like there's, dozens to choose from, so I've written for publications that have a designated opinion section, but I also quite like writing my opinion for publications where the opinion is just part of a first-person piece or a news-related piece, publications like Domain or Kidspot or news.com.au, where my opinion's there, but it's not labelled as opinion or it's, it's not a formal section.
More of a personal essay, as you talked about before.
Yes. And there's a significant overlap between those two with some opinion pieces.
I know that when I was starting out, I would often write, be asked to write a piece for the back page of a magazine that I was working on if they didn't have something or someone had pulled out. And so they were obviously opinion pieces. And there are so many of those I regret looking back, but I was really young and I didn't think, I didn't really think about it or how they might date or whatever. Do you ever have any opinion pieces that you regret writing? Or have
Luckily not. Maybe I think that might help by the fact that I was already in my 40s by the time I started writing them. So, perhaps my views of the world were a little bit more formed, or perhaps I was doing less outrageous things to write about. I do think that's something that writers need to be cognizant of with first-person pieces or opinion pieces. But my pieces do come from my life and sometimes include others, so sometimes I need to consult, like my latest opinion piece was about the caffeine content of the rebranded Sprite, and it revolved around an experience my daughter had. So luckily my kids are old enough now that I can openly consult them. My daughter gave permission for me to write that and read it before I submitted. I haven't regretted an article, but I do think, as humans, we are allowed to change our opinions. So yes, there is a chance that something that's out there in print, you will later on change your opinion about. It hasn't happened yet, but I am aware that that's a possibility.
What are the trickiest pieces for you to write?
That Sprite one was probably my trickiest, even though by this stage I'm quite an experienced opinion writer. That one was because I had to do a lot of research. I had the opinion, but I didn't, and I had a hunch about the facts behind it, but I didn't know those facts and I didn't know them in detail enough to present them confidently. So that one, the research and, a little bit of nervousness, even now I will often get nervous about how a piece is going to be received.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Another thing I find, now you talked about it briefly about, is the pay rate, because with opinion pieces, I understand a lot of the outlets or mastheads have a set rate for opinion pieces. Is that right? And can you negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, that there's often there's that interplay between a set rate and a per word rate. They might present it as a set rate, $400, but we want 800 words, so the equivalent is 50 cents a word. I mean, I think in general, opinion writing, feature writing, any writing for media, for newspapers and magazines, I think at the moment there is limited room for negotiation.
Yeah.
Unless you become particularly well known, either for your writing or, in other facets of your life. I'm really happy to see and to be a part of efforts being made by MEA, Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, which is the union that covers freelance writers. They're actively working to see pay rates rise. And really happy to see that it seems like the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age have very recently upped their rate for opinion pieces from 50 cents a word to 70 cents a word.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I think they should be $1 plus, plus a word, but at least increases are in the right direction. And I'm hopeful that that's now for all writers.
We mentioned earlier on in the chat about, getting a regular column. Is that something that you're interested in or actively trying to do? Or do you just like to, get an opinion when it comes through and send it out to the outlet you're interested in?
Yeah, it's not something I've ever, pitched or approached for. Look, I'd love it if it was offered to me. But there is then the flip side of then you're under pressure to come up with an opinion.
Every
week. I'm not short on an opinion, but I think there's a comfort and a joy that comes with just responding to what comes from within you and responding to what's happening in your day-to-day life or in the wider world, rather than feeling under pressure to produce something every week or every month or whatever it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I know opinion writing isn't all you do. What other avenues of work? We talked offline a bit about photography.
Yes, that's a very small part. Occasionally I will cast aside my keyboard and pick up a camera. I wrote about it for Rachel's List. I have a once a year photography gig, which is just so refreshing to kind of step into a completely different pair of shoes for a while. I'm also just starting to do a little bit of portrait and family photography in my local area. But yes, in terms of writing, I like to say that I write in many colours. So my main income comes from content writing, blogs, articles, case studies, email marketing, video scripts, all of those kind of things. I also write feature articles. I obviously teach on a regular basis both my opinion writing course, and I'm a tutor for the Australian Writer Centre's freelance writing stage 1 course. And every now and again I pick up a camera. And of course, like all writers, there's a novel in development and a non-fiction book in development, but I'm not going to rave about them until they're significantly further progressed.
How amazing. Well, it sounds like you have a very varied week. What are you working on right now?
This week, and in fact today, is a perfect mix. I've got a feature article to pitch. I'm hoping to hear back about an opinion piece I submitted on Spec yesterday. I've got edits, I think, for 2 content pieces and 1 to write. I'm checking in on my courses to see if any questions have been asked, emailing a potential coaching client about times, and I actually just brought up my photography lights from their storage spot to check them. So really varied.
Amazing.
Wow. I guess that maybe we might jump ahead and talk about your opinion writing course at the Writer Centre. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's now set up. I started running it as a live Zoom course, but once the content was kind of bedded down and, got really positive feedback, it's now that the teaching modules have been recorded. So it's all run via the Australian Writer Centre, so they deal with all of the practicalities in enrolments and tech and marketing and all of that stuff. and I get to focus on the teaching. So it's a 4-week course. It starts at a set time and finishes at a set time. So there's a cohort of people learning together, which I always think is great. People can listen to the learning modules anytime that suits them during the week. And then there's a weekly assignment that I give feedback on. And I'm there in the online classroom to answer any questions or just, participate in conversation about what's being learnt about. It sounds cliche, but I literally love every minute of it, except perhaps when I was first recording the modules and I was so nervous that I
Yes.
seriously sounded like a robot. Hilarious. I'll have to post it one day as an outtake.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I first started writing opinion pieces, I looked around for a course and, it's that typical thing. There wasn't one. So I decided to make my own. I love helping people develop their opinion writing voices and get their opinions out in the world. Now, that might be through newspapers and mainstream media, or it might be for their own platforms, their LinkedIn, their blogs, their socials, because the principles are all the same.
What would be your advice to writers who are thinking about doing opinion writing and haven't dived in yet?
Oh, look, absolutely. Just give it a go with any new type of writing. Obviously, reading that style of writing is a great place to start, and reading a really broad range. And with opinion writing, that can be tricky because it can be hard to read an opinion piece where you strongly disagree with the opinion, but reading it can still be helpful in terms of looking at the techniques and the approaches and the language and things like that. So reading widely, obviously, if you've got a particular publication in mind, reading pieces from that publication and getting a sense. My main message to people is that opinion writing, in some ways, it seems like a very narrow genre of writing, but actually once you're within opinion writing, it's incredibly broad. Anything from those essentially a first-person piece that is just using the anniversary of an event as the hook, all the way to, a really strong rant on a topic, all the way through to a very highly researched academic, opinion piece. So once you're in that world, there's actually a real breadth to it, and you just need to sort of find where you suit. And then it's really about developing your opinion writing voice, because you are central to an opinion piece.
How amazing, Vivienne. Tell us where people can find your course and find out more about you and connect with you.
Absolutely. So my website, which of course I'm redoing at the moment.
We're all redoing our website.
But if you jump on now, you'll see the old version, and then hopefully later on see the transformation. So I'm at viviennepearson.com. From there, you can then find me on LinkedIn. I have a writing presence on Facebook, but it's not very active, but, Messenger works through there. And on Instagram, I only post pictures of flowers. So only look me up there if that's your thing. And in terms of my course, as I said, it's through the Australian Writers Centre. They're at writerscentre.com.au. And from there, there's the whole world of their courses. And opinion writing is listed under the freelance writing sort of genre.
Fantastic.
It's fascinating with the Australian Writers Centre, because we've actually had a number of writers that have got their start as a freelancer, including, of course, Lynne Alexander, who's one of their best graduates, or most best known graduates.
Yes.
And it's obviously a great place to start, particularly if you're just interested in writing. There's quite a few different courses available, isn't there?
Absolutely. And they're substantial courses, but it's not like enrolling in a postgraduate diploma. They're 4 or 5 week courses. They're affordable. It's not like staking your whole life on it. You can use those courses to explore as well as, launch into a new type of writing.
Amazing. Oh, this has been fascinating. Thanks so much for coming on, Viv.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree. It's been lovely having you. It's great chat. Such an interesting niche. It's made me think a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our show this week. But thanks to everyone who has been listening and emailing us and sharing us on social media. We're getting a lot more listeners through, which is absolutely awesome.
Every week, more and more, H. Yeah.
Yes. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a rating and a review on the platform where you find your podcast. And we will pop all the show notes in the iTunes app. Yeah.
So you can find out about Viv and everything.
And thank you again to our sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. You can find them at rounded.com.au.
See everyone next week again.
We will.
Thank you. Thanks, Viv.
Bye.
Bye.